there's not a right or a wrong answer to anything, and beneath that there's a hidden superpower that you can unleash. And what I mean by this, right, is I've just had this realization, because at the moment I'm stepping into a new business. I just set up a new business, and to fuel the growth of that business, I'm doing a lot of content online. So it's targeting guys who are struggling with their habits, their focus, their attention. And what I'm learning is I'm studying these people. I'm studying guys online who help with copywriting, who help with marketing, who help with sales, who help with content. And there's so much advice out there, great advice, but a lot of it contradicts the other piece of advice. And so you start to get in your head about this, and you start to think, well, what is the right answer? And the truth is that there is no right answer. It's right for that person, that's why they're giving that advice. But ultimately, right, let's say that you've got 5 different content creators, and each of them are using a different strategy. None of them are right and none of them are wrong. The only thing that matters beneath this is that whatever you do it with full intensity and full authenticity, because ultimately it's a consistency thing. You know, are you the type of guy that continues to show up and does the work regardless of how you feel? Are you the type of guy who doesn't get too bogged down on strategy and just decides to just put yourself out there? And I noticed this in my first business. My first business was Airbnb management. When I was 22 years old, I set up this business, and you know, as a young guy, I had to look towards mentors for advice on which route to go down. And I'd go to these, I'd learn online, I'd learn on YouTube, I bought courses, I read books, podcasts, I went to networking events. And any time I'd speak to some people at these networking events, and you'd have 2 people that you'd speak to back to back, and one of them would swear by a certain strategy, say buy-to-lets. You know, they just buy a normal property and they rent it out to a family. Then you go and have a conversation with the next person, and they say, no, that's the worst strategy ever, you don't want to do that. And the whole thing that I kind of realized was like, none of it matters. There's no right or wrong answer to anything with regards to the kind of direction that you want to take in life. You know, I'm sure that you've probably experienced before, maybe your parents wanted you to go down the academic route. They wanted you to get good grades, go to university or college and get a good job. But you didn't want to do that, and you looked up to people who didn't do that and decided to set up their own business or whatever it may be. None of the advice was right or wrong, because regardless of which path you took, that was the path that you took, that was the decision that you made, and you know, you can't go back and change those decisions. So I think the whole message behind this is basically that it's just to take action, because it's so easy in the day of information that we live in this modern day age of information everywhere. We've got an abundance of information at our fingertips, and it's an amazing thing for us to have, amazing. But there's negatives to that as well, and one of the negatives is having too much information and not taking any action at all, because you're overloaded. You know, you're overloaded with the information and you don't know which path to decide. So it's kind of, get into this analysis paralysis, and you start weighing up all of the options, and by the time that you've studied this certain strategy, you found out about another strategy, but your competition, who doesn't care about whether what he's doing is perfect. I need to make sure I get a new headstand for this camera. The guy who doesn't care, your competition, about things being perfect is the guy who makes the most progress. He's not sat there studying on 10 different strategies before he decides to make any plays. He's just doing it. He's just doing it. Same for me. Like, I could have waited until I was in a perfect environment for this video for me to shoot this video. I could help so many more people in that time frame, even if just one person sees this. Why would I wait 2 weeks to get all of my script prepared and get all of my notes, and maybe go and make sure that I go to the perfect place, but I've gone to this place and it's a little bit noisy, so now I'm going to have to find a new place, and a couple of weeks go by and you've made no progress, and your competitors made 20 videos, 30 videos in those 2 weeks that you were just waiting to get everything perfect. Perfectionism is, and I'm very guilty of trying to do this in many areas of life, is being a perfectionist. But perfectionism is the enemy of progress. It really is. Perfectionism is the enemy of progress. It's so freeing when you can break away from this perfectionism curse, because yes, sometimes it's good to have that trait, especially when working on a high level and you've got teams to do that, you've got time to do that, resources. But when you're just trying to make some moves, when you're just trying to make progress, you just have to do it. You just have to get it out there. Get whatever you need to do done. Get whatever you need to say said. Because that provides so much more leverage. Again, going back to my property business, we made more progress by just doing imperfect action, because a lot of the time, the landlords that we were working with, the landlords that wanted us to manage their properties, they liked the authenticity of me and my business partner. We were young lads who were hungry to make things work. We wanted to make sure that the work that we were doing was good. We worked extremely hard for the landlords that we were managing for to get the properties booked out. We had the integrity, we had the work ethic, and we had the authenticity. We had loads of videos online. We had a YouTube vlog. We met up with thousands of people and just showed them the real us. No hiding behind false images, no waiting until the perfect moment. I remember when we wanted to get on some podcasts and we were kind of like, I don't know if we're ready, and then we got an opportunity and we were like, fuck it doesn't matter if we're ready, like, we're going to get better at this anyway. Same as if you're doing content for the first time. Your first 100 videos are going to suck. They are going to be awful and you're going to cringe. It's going to be uncomfortable. But in 200 videos time, when you're looking back at that, you're not going to care. You're going to laugh. You're going to be able to look back at it and go, wow, that was awful, but I'm glad I did it, because it pushed me to this new elevated position where I've got more skills. I've analysed through my own mistakes rather than learning from people who have made those mistakes. You have to make mistakes yourself. It's great to learn from other people's mistakes, 100%, of course it is. It's going to save you a lot of money and a lot of time. But you do also have to make mistakes yourself. And by taking action, you're going to learn that. And understand that mistakes that you make, whether in life, whether in business, they're often not final. what I mean by this is, like, obviously you're gonna make some mistakes where it's like, okay, you know, I've messed up this and now I've lost, say, the business, for example. But you've gained skills. You didn't die. You've still got opportunities as long as you just keep pushing forward. So just take action. The core understanding of this whole video, the deeper layer, is to just take action, take imperfect action, just get started and do something. See you on the next one.